All right, to Ottawa next. A lot of questions remain as the country steadies itself after a pivotal federal election. And one big one is how Parliament will work under yet another minority government. We bring in our Ottawa correspondent, Glen McGregor. Okay, Glen, what can we expect when MPs return to the House? Because there's still some questions left.
This is going to look like a very different House of Commons. It's sort of almost a majority government. The Liberals ended up, when the final seat counts were in last night, remember Elections Canada didn't really fully report all the results until late yesterday afternoon, that the Liberals are at 169 seats. That's 3 short of the 172 they needed for a majority. So what does that mean when the House of Commons eventually comes back? Well, the Liberals are going to have to work across party lines to negotiate to get legislation passed, starting with their throne speech. That will be a confidence vote in the House of Commons when the government lays out its priorities in this speech that will be delivered by the Governor General. But the thing is, it doesn't look like any of the other parties right now are in position where they could possibly risk bringing down the government on, say, the first federal budget that the Liberals are expected to introduce sometime this spring after the House returns. And the reason for that is they're all kind of in varying states of disarray. The Conservatives, of course, have lost their leader's seat in the House of Commons. Pierre Poilievre lost his seat, and we don't know if he's going to try to get reelected in a by-election. That would require someone dropping out of the House of Commons right now who already has a seat. It could be that a Conservative MP who was elected the other night, on Monday night, would decide to, for the good of the party, step down and allow Poilievre to run in that seat. But then that would give the government and the option, and they will have up to 6 months to call a by-election, and they can set the by-election for any date they want. So if Poilievre can find somebody to step down, then Carney would have some time before he has to call that by-election. So it looks like Pierre Poilievre is going to be out of the House of Commons at the very least for the near future and possibly indefinitely. We don't know if he actually intends to try and come back and lead the party, although his comments on election night sounded like he is still intending to do that. And the other thing is, will the party tolerate that? Will his caucus want him back to run another election campaign, given what happened on Monday night? This huge lead that they had had in the polls only a few months ago was blown. A lot of recriminations, a lot bouncing back and forth within conservative circles about who is to blame for their failure to win election and allow the Liberals to win a 4th term. On the New Democrat side, then, they also have lost their leader and their numbers are massively reduced, just down to 7 seats. But that 7 seats, if they aligned on legislation in votes in the House of Commons, would give the Liberals that majority strength they need to pass bills. So it's going to be an interesting collaborative experience heading forward. And certainly that's something that Mark Carney is probably looking at right now, talking with his advisors, how they're going to handle that. But he's got some other priorities as well. He's got to appoint a cabinet, first of all. He's got to prepare that throne speech, lay out what he intends to do with his first term in government. And, of course, the main thing that he ran on in the election campaign is managing the relationship with the United States. Yesterday, he had a telephone call with U.S. President Donald Trump. It sounds like it went relatively smoothly. I'm going to read to you from something called the readout. This is basically a statement that the Prime Minister's office puts out, recapping the phone call. They tend to be very vague, not very precise, but it's some interesting language in here anyway. The leaders agreed on the importance of Canada and the United States working together. That's pretty boilerplate. Of course they would. As independent sovereign nations for their mutual benefit. That is key language, of course, because Donald Trump has repeatedly mused about making Canada the 51st state. He doesn't really respect our sovereignty. He used to call Prime Minister Trudeau, former Prime Minister Trudeau, he's called Governor Trudeau. And this has been an issue. And Carney says he's only going to have this negotiation if Trump comes to this with an attitude of respect and respect for Canada's sovereignty. So we're waiting to see. We could possibly get more details about this when this face-to-face meeting they talked about yesterday in that phone call is going to occur and where. Very likely it will be in Washington. That was Carney would go to the White House to meet with Trump at some point. And some point relatively soon, too, because Trump is scheduled to come to Canada in June for the G7, which Canada is hosting this year. The summit of G7 leaders going to be held in Kananaskis, Alberta in June. Trump will, of course, come to that, and he'll have an opportunity to meet Carney face-to-face there, as Carney will be the summit host this year. But this suggests the language that came out of the Prime Minister's office yesterday, suggesting that an actual face-to-face meeting will occur much sooner than that. And Carney has said, of course, he wants to get that negotiation started with the Trump to try and deal with these tariffs that are punishing the Canadian economy in the auto sector, in the metals sector, steel and aluminum, and of course the so-called fentanyl tariffs, which technically kind of remain in place, although they're sort of under suspension for most products that we export to the U.S. So lots of balls in the air for Mark Carney on his first week back on the job after the election. We're waiting to see today what date that big meeting, Faiza, is going to occur.
All right, Glenn, while I have you here, some developments this morning when it comes to the unconventional leadership setup for the Green parties. One of the co-leaders has decided to step down. So what does this mean for the party going forward, and will there be any ripple effects in Parliament?
Yeah, I'd never really understood this co-leader. I've never seen anything like it. The Green Party, yes, in February, they appointed a guy named Jonathan Pedneau, young guy from Montreal, been a former journalist. They appointed him co-leader of the party, so he would share that title with Elizabeth May, who, of course, long-standing Green Party leader, and her leadership has been through many kind of iterations and variations. At one point, she was out. Remember, Annamie Paul led the party disastrously in an election in 2021. That did not work out. May came back as leader. She's kind of the grand madame of the Green Party in this country, and she was re-elected in her riding on Vancouver Island, in Saanich Gulf Islands is the name of the riding. I was actually on the Carney campaign the night before the election, and they made this sort of a crazy cross-country hop where they visited cities all the way out to, and the last stop, so Carney's last event of the election was in Liz May's riding in Saanich Gulf Island, trying to convince people to vote Liberal in that riding and not back the Green Party. It didn't work. May was reelected again, and she remains now the only leader of the Green Party. They don't have the co-leader system anymore. Jonathan Pedneau had tried to get elected in a riding called Outremont. Some folks might remember that as being Thomas Mulcair's riding in downtown Montreal. It's a working class neighborhood. It's a bit more friendly to progressives. It is currently held and was recaptured again on Monday night by Rachel Bendian, a Liberal MP. Pedneau finished well down the track, only got, I think, fewer than 3,000 votes. He did not do well. And he had tried to get elected even in 2023. He'd run in a by-election also in Montreal in a riding called Notre-Dame-de-Grâce in the west end part of the downtown, and lost out to Anna Gainey. She's the daughter of Bob Gainey, the famous Montreal Canadiens hockey player. She's also married to Tom Pitfield, who's a very close friend of Justin Trudeau's, and she had been the president of the party. Anyway, I'm digressing. Pedneau lost in that one too. So his statement today says, listen, I've asked voters in Montreal to send me to Ottawa twice. They haven't done it. I'm basically stepping down as Green Party leader. That leaves the Greens just one seat in the House of Commons. Really doesn't have much of a balance of power either because, as I say, there's 7 New Democrats who can help the Liberals pass bills and on votes in the House of Commons. So not really a big problem for them. But the larger question is, whether the Greens, is there any future for this party in Canada? They have never really had much electoral success, either at the federal or provincial levels. Green parties are very successful in Europe, in Germany, in France. Not so much here in Canada. So I don't know how much longer this movement is going to continue. It really remains, Faiza, a party of one. That is Liz May, who has been the face of the party, and she is now their sole MP.
You know, Glenn, I thought it was going to get a little bit quieter once the election wrapped up. That doesn't seem to be the case.
No chance.
Far from it.
No chance at all.
All right, you're going to be busy for the days and weeks to come. Glen McGregor in Ottawa. We'll check back with you later today. Thanks.